This is Mayor-to-be Gavin Buckley on the Maryland Crabs saying this is the best solution to a hangover, listening to these guys talk. I feel better already.
Live from a grungy kitchen table located in Annapolis, Maryland's scenic and historic capital, it's the Maryland Crabs Podcast. With each episode, your hosts, Tim Hamilton, John Frenay, and the occasional guest will dive in and pick apart the stuff that really matters most to you. We're too lazy to actually solve any of these problems, but we can definitely stir the pot. From schools, politics, parking in the fire lane, to those horrible people who drive BMWs. And here with this week's episode, live from the kitchen table, Tim Hamilton and John Frenay.
Hey, it's the Maryland Crabs, and I'm doing it this time because I'm not going to let Tim sing it.
Well, you're going to sit in the squeaky chair, though, aren't you?
I will. I'll sit there and I'll tap on the table.
I do the editing so I can hear all the finger taps and thumps. So whenever we're interviewing someone who's thumping their fingers, I just start sweating profusely. I'm a little obsessive compulsive, folks.
Hey, that was a good conversation we had last week with Mike Friedman.
I didn't know half that stuff. I'm going to be honest with you. I really, there's sometimes where you will feign ignorance for the sake of an interview. I honestly thought that I knew a lot about the stuff, about concussions, and I didn't know any of that stuff. And when I asked him, if you had a son, would you let him play football? Or I guess he does. I said, would you let your son play football? Right. And he said no. He didn't even hesitate. That kind of spooked me a little bit.
It's not something, I mean, it's something that's so unknown, and, the long-term damage from it. It makes sense.
He's struggling without concussions. He's a typical teenage boy, so I don't want to do anything that would throw a wrench into it, the whole thing.
We all do. We all do.
But it was a good talk with him. Great facility. I don't have a doctor, and I think I'm going to start going there. Yeah, I like the spa-like atmosphere.
It is. You're like a spa kind of a guy. You probably get pedicures and stuff.
I like the plink-plunk music. He didn't have any. I think he should have plink-plunk music. I like that. Yeah, when you get the massage.
Well, on Thursdays, they have harpists that sit there and play the harp.
My mom played the harp.
Yeah, I'm sure she would.
No, she did. We were Irish. We got 2 harps in the house. That's why I never had parties when we were kids, because I just imagined my idiot friends getting hammered and power playing the harp.
Oh, man. Hey, I was up in Philly over the weekend.
For the heartbreaking game. That was a great game.
It was a good game. And I'll tell you, that last kick, we were up there in the press box and it was like, oh my God, he got it.
I thought he had it too.
And then it was like, oh no, shitty angle. and it wasn't good. But the last 2 penalties that
killed him
back 10 yards. I mean, he could have made it at 25.
Yeah.
At 45, there was no way.
For anyone who didn't watch it, there was a blinding snow going on at the time, the whole time. So, I mean, it was, I guess they had come out and they had to shovel lines at the
TV breaks. They came out with the blowers to blow the lines off so we could see where the lines were. And then when the kicker at the very end, it came down to a 14-13 game. Army ended up winning. But Navy had 13 points, was ready to kick a field goal, take the lead with seconds left, and they had the entire team come out and start to shovel snow off of where the kicker was going to be.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it was to give him the traction and to be able to dig his cleats in, I guess, and everything else to do that. So it was kind of interesting.
And you posted a heartbreaking picture of probably the most pathetic cheesesteak I've ever seen in my life. You were in the home of the cheesesteak, the cradle of cheesesteaks, and it was a pathetic chicken cheese whiz cheesesteak.
Chopped chicken crap. Oh, God. Every year they do cheesesteaks. And Philadelphia the city is known for cheesesteaks. Annapolis,
but you don't do the Geno's. Like the whole Geno's Pats is like no self-respecting Philadelphian would go to either one of those places, right?
Yes, they would. I mean, everybody's got their own little peculiarities on taste. But Geno's and Pats, I
thought those were just tourist traps.
Oh, they certainly are, and so is Jim's on South Street. But I mean, it's not to say that the locals don't go there.
Pips has got a great cheesesteak. I love Pips here in town.
Pips does. They're close. Not quite where it is, but every year they have cheesesteaks up there, and it's just a plate of cheese. It's not quite like going to the place and getting it, but it's decent.
Oh, like in the press box sort of thing.
Yeah.
Oh, gotcha.
I mean, so it's like a buffet thing. They've got a big old tray full.
I didn't actually read your post. I just looked at the picture.
And this, I was like, "What is this?" And it's like, "Oh, it's chicken." I'm like, "Chicken." This is, it was horrible. I mean, you come to Annapolis and they want the crab cakes. I mean, you don't give them a tuna fish sandwich.
Yeah, or the crab legs. Although I could eat the hell out of some crab legs. So we're anxiously, or I am, because I am a national and international world news junkie, whereas you're more of a local guy, and I am fixated on the Roy Moore election, which is going on right now. We're recording this. We're at the Commons, the beautiful Commons here on West Street, and it's after 6 p.m. on Tuesday night. And we got
to find some beer.
Yeah, we do have to find some beer. But I got to thinking about this. So the Roy Moore thing. So wherever you fall on this, it's kind of interesting. I think that you have a lot of the Republicans saying people know what the issues are right now, and if they vote him in, they're voting him in knowing that, and that's actually a very valid point. And it kind of got me thinking about Peruka, our county councilman,
Michael Peruka, the councilman for District 5.
So if you're on Facebook at all, and we all are, so the Arundel Patriot, which is a very left leaning,
it's sort of like the Breitbart of Anne Arundel County.
Yeah, sort of. So they're. I mean, and I don't think they make
not Breitbart, but
they don't make any qualms about it. But he has been on their radar, and there's been some articles and a lot of the posts about Peruka, and I think because of his past. I mean, he was part of
the League of the South, and
right. And I've been thinking about that a lot, and I'm thinking, you know what? It's because there's always these calls whenever something happens nationally with more or anything. They say, "Well, what does Peruka say about this?" And I wonder if it's fair that you have somebody who everyone was elected with, everyone knowing his past, but all of a sudden he becomes the arbiter of any sort of miscreant on the right. And I was thinking about that. Is the criticism that he's been getting, especially lately, fair, considering that everybody knew what his past was and his record was when he was elected, because he was elected among the council as county chair or county council chair last week, right? And there was a lot of people who were very upset about that.
They're making a big deal out of this, and again, it tends to be the chairmanship of the county council tends to be more of a round robin type of a thing.
Right.
Everybody gets a chance to do it twice if they're in there for 8 years. So I mean, that's just sort of the way it works.
Right. And so I don't agree with, his views, I don't think, but at the same time, I think we got to be reasonable and understand. I mean, the Moore thing is different, I think, so much because he's not acknowledging the accusations as being truthful. He's denying them. So when they say we're electing him knowing his past, well, no, you're electing him knowing the accusations. I think that might be a little bit different. But with Peruka, I think that's a little bit different because there's nothing of that magnitude, number one, but as distasteful as some people might find him, he was elected into this position, and I don't know how you can hold someone accountable for something that's acknowledged, that's in the open.
Well, the thing right now with Peruka is that they're holding him to the fire is because he had supported Moore.
Well, there was that thing the other day, so it was...
he's contributed to his campaign. He went down for his primary win, the whole nine yards. I mean, he's a friend. They were... so they are tight.
Yeah. Now, this is where you have to divide it in half. So if you look at why Roy Moore, what the issues are with him is one, that he was, he was censured twice by the Supreme Court or the Judicial Board in Alabama for
the Ten Commandments.
Well, the Ten Commandments and also telling them to disregard the Supreme Court ruling on gay marriage. I just stuttered all that out, but so I mean, that's in and of itself, I would think would disqualify him, as a voter. Now, in all fairness, the local, I think it was him and Judge Crooks, who we interviewed in Crab Cake, and there was a third.
Steve Shue, you had
Middlebrooks, but they did have a fundraiser for him where they participated or whatever, but that was also before the most serious allegations came out, and they are serious, and I think the way it came on Facebook and on the Arundel Patriot, as if they had this recently, it was after, and the accusations were made, and it wasn't. So I mean, I think you got to be
is that
fair.
Is that purposeful too?
Well, yeah, it is.
Yeah.
That's somewhat, I even think it's a filter that you put through the news. I mean, this is just an example. You look at the back and forth that went between John Acosta from CNN yesterday at the presser with Sanders, that they were battling back and forth, and looking at Twitter, depending on who it was commenting, whether it was the left or the right, you said that she embarrassed him, or you said that he embarrassed her. But this is the filter that we're all looking at our politics for right now, and I think it's disingenuous on everyone's side.
Well, that's true. Well, we'll find out the decision on Roy Moore
probably during this.
By the time you listen to this, so
right.
We'll know whether he's a senator from Alabama or not. Hey, and we're on Spotify.
Yes, we are. And I had nothing to do with it, but I will take credit for it.
Absolutely, you do. You do that very well.
I do, but I worked very hard to read John's text to me about being on Spotify.
Yeah, no, it was very cool. So now if you've got Spotify on your mobile phone or in your car or at home, just search for the Maryland Crabs. Or if you want to look at the Eye on Annapolis Daily News Brief, that's on there too.
You can listen to any one of our 70 episodes, 70 plus.
I can't believe we've done that. I can't believe we've had that much commitment and
well, you have. You're like, we got to record. I want to take a break once. It was once during last year during Thanksgiving, and I said, "Well, we take a week off," and John wouldn't allow it. He is a taskmaster.
It all started with you. We were supposed to do this once a month or something like that, or once every other week.
Yeah, it was every 2 weeks. Yeah, and then we accidentally fell into once a week, right off the bat.
Yeah, I was like, okay, well, screwed that up.
It gets me out of the house. I'm not going to lie. And Kathy likes it too. She likes me out of the house.
That is
so
true.
You can't avoid us. We're on Spotify. We're on TuneIn. Yeah, so that's on your Alexa.
We're on Stitcher. We're on Amazon.
Yeah.
Is it Alexa? Echo is the word.
And then Apple.
Not Google Home.
Does anyone use Google Home?
I don't know. It's up there with
Apple Podcasts, and we're on Google Play, and you're on YouTube if you're so inclined. But what you want to do is you really do want to subscribe, because that way it gets delivered to you every week and you don't have to worry about it. With YouTube, you have to go and find us, and it's just a lot of work.
Right.
So you want to subscribe to us, and then all the other wonderful podcasts we have locally, which is the Annapolis podcast. More power to you. I think the Annapolis Pint, I was hanging out with.
The Naptown Pintcast.
Yeah, I was hanging out with her at a swanky lawyer event last week. Mm-hmm. We talked beer.
Very cool. Speaking of beer, we do need to find some before our guest rolls in. And today we're going to be talking to Rock Toews, who is...
That's a good name, Rock Toews.
Yeah, but it's spelled weird. We'll talk about that a little bit. It's like Toews. And he ran for alderman in Ward 8. At one point, he is a small business owner down on Main Street in Annapolis. He owns Back Creek Books. And he made a posting on Facebook that was interesting, that got my attention in the Eastport neighborhood forum. And I called him and I said, hey, you want to talk about it? And he said, yeah, I absolutely do. So he's going to talk about what it's like, I guess, to be a small business owner on Main Street in Annapolis, see what the good, the bad, the ugly is, and perhaps what his ideas are as far as the future under a new mayor with Gavin Buckley.
Yep.
So we're going to pay some bills real quick. Listen to this. Listen to some of these
bill payers. Yeah,
bill paying things that are going to happen. And we will be right back with Rock Toews from Back Creek Books.
After we find beer. Hey folks, this is Tim Hamilton, your favorite co-host of the Maryland Crabs podcast. Besides being hilarious and charming on this podcast every week, I'm also a marketing professional with clients all over the region. I buy advertising and media from my clients, including TV, cable, newspaper, magazine, Facebook, blah, blah, blah. And this may surprise you, but I still buy direct mail. I know it sounds very 1978, but to be completely honest, if you have a compelling message to convey, and you do it in a creative way, direct mail is dollar for dollar one of the best advertising channels out there, especially for small businesses who don't have much in the way of a marketing or advertising budget. And if I decide to use direct mail for a project, I call Post Haste Mailing in Annapolis. I've worked with Jack Ellis, the owner of Post Haste, for almost 15 years now on countless projects, and he is, in all honesty, my number one most trusted vendor. In fact, whenever I find myself in a crisis, a sales slump, an event that looked like it was going to fall on its face, a new product launch that was pushed up a few weeks, my very first phone call is always to Jack. He always gives me the answer I need. Maybe not the answer that I want, but one that gets me out of that particular jam. I'm not kidding. He has saved my job on more than one occasion. Seriously. So what does Post Haste Mailing do? Well, they do mailings, duh. That's in the name after all. But it's Jack's decades of experience that gives you the best bang for your marketing buck. Do you want to micro-target certain customers or neighborhoods or businesses? Jack can pull a list for you that makes sure that your mailing gets into the hands of your target demographic without the advertising waste that you get with other media. That means that if you have a small budget, you can still get the results you need. And if you need printing done, Post Haste Mailing can do that too. Postcards of any size, pamphlets, variable data printing, cut sheet laser printing, and a bunch of other printing terms that I don't understand. But Jack understands them, and he knows what's best for my business and how I can get the best bang for my buck. So if you're a business owner and you've never considered direct mail, give Jack at Post Haste Mailing a call to see what he can do for you. I promise you that you will be surprised at the options you didn't know were available to your business. Who knows? Maybe someday Jack can save your job too.
Well, welcome, Rock Toews. Now, am I pronouncing that right, Toews?
Yeah, like T-A-V-E-S, Toews. It's actually
okay.
V sound.
Slavic?
And it is Toews.
Correct. Yeah,
so it's Toews. Rock is the proprietor of Back Creek Books, which is located on Main Street now, right up in the upper, just on the north side of Chicken Roost.
Yeah, upper Main, I call it, probably the upper third of Main Street.
And if nobody's ever been in there, it's a very great browsing store.
A very great one.
If you're ever looking for any rare books with a history bent to it, with a Annapolis bent to it, and you've got your own little fetish with Lincoln, as well.
It's always been an interest of mine.
Oh, I thought you said LinkedIn. I'm like, oh, yeah, I'll connect with you. That's great.
I think I'm on there.
Yeah.
But could be. Could be. And I think you've got actually a sort of a fascinating story. And the reason that we brought you in, and we'll get to it in a bit, is of a comment that you made on Facebook. And that's always where the best arguments start, is on Facebook. But, you've got a really interesting story. I mean, you ran for alderman in Ward 8 in Annapolis for a little bit. Well, not for a little bit, for one time.
Yeah. 2009.
And did you went to the general election, or did you lose in a primary?
I did not have a primary opponent, so.
Okay, so you went into the general and ended up losing.
Nice, John.
That's it. It happens. Just talk to Mike; he'll tell you. Came in second. Good job.
By a fairly narrow margin, a frightening margin for Ross, I believe.
Right.
At that point, so.
He's had a few of those.
Your business was initially online.
Correct. Yeah.
So you're going the other way. You're going the opposite direction.
Yeah, for 16 years, the better part of 16 years, it was an internet and by appointment business from my house in Eastport, which is where the name Back Creek comes from.
Right.
Because I'm about a block off from Back Creek.
That was your garage, right?
Basement.
Okay.
Close. Yeah.
Close.
The next best place to have a business.
That's true. That's true. If it was a garage, you could have been the next Steve Jobs of the book.
Right. So for 16 years, primarily internet and by appointment. And then in 2011, I opened the shop on West Street.
How did you get into that?
So that came about, I think like a lot of people, really like bookshops, like going in them, all that kind of stuff. I always had that as well. And at one point in my life, one of the jobs that I did was I started as a part-time bookseller at the Barnes & Noble here in Annapolis. And at that time, that was 94, I guess. And I think that store had opened in 92. Anyway,
It's been there that long?
Yeah, that store opened in 1992 in the Harbor Center.
I had no idea.
Usually in the spot where now Old Navy is.
Totally off topic here. You know a guy named Ron Delby?
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, Janet and his wife used to work with me when I owned my travel agencies.
Oh, wow, really? Okay, yeah. And Ron and I go way back because, I'll get to that story in a second, but to answer your question first.
Thank you. Thank you, Rock.
Yes, that was. So I'm working at the Barnes & Noble here. This is before really the internet. So this is 1994. I mean, the internet's there, but there's not like books and stuff like that you can buy online so much. And people would come in there and it was the biggest bookstore they'd ever seen, this Barnes & Noble here in Annapolis, which is like only 15,000 square feet, I think, or something like that. And they could not believe that we didn't have whatever obscure book that they could remember from their childhood. And they'd come up to the counter and they'd ask, well, do you have this? Or, So my business started as a search service to find these books for people that we didn't have in the store.
So you were kind of filling a niche.
Yeah. So, and at that time, before the internet got rolling along with all kinds of stuff available online, the way you would find a book that was out of print, you advertised in trade. There was a trade magazine that you advertised in, and went all across the country. And people would publish. I would publish a list at once, and then people would send you little postcards back in the mail, and that's how you fulfill these things. So that's how it started. And then when the internet came along, within almost a year or within 2 years, I started to actually have an inventory of my own that I would offer for sale online. And then my son was born in 99. At that point, I had been managing the store. I started out as a part-time bookseller at Barnes & Noble. I ended up managing the store. And that's where Ron Delby comes into the story, because he came in as one of my assistant managers at some point from B. Dalton, where he had been working.
B. Dalton.
B. Dalton Books.
Like Crown Books.
Up at Security in Baltimore.
Ron told me one of the little factoids that he told me when he opened, I guess, the Bowie store.
Yes.
It was said that what is the most stolen book chain-wide at that time in Barnes & Noble?
Huh.
And or not the book. What's the most stolen thing in their inventory? And we were all out drinking or something like that, and we're going like, oh, it's got to be CDs. And then we're like, oh, no. It's got to be like the atlases or something like that, or like the big
books, right?
the big dictionaries or something like that. And he says, yeah, no, the Bible.
That is correct.
Well,
I guess it's cheaper than getting a $39.99 hotel room and picking it off of the Gideons. But
so I was telling you when you first came in the room that I swung by your store the other day, kind of by happen chance. My kids were at their piano lessons last Tuesday night, so I was just kind of wandering downtown, and it was really quiet night, so I wandered in. Sure. And as soon as I came in, I got hit with that nostalgia. Like the smell hit me of just the books and the silence.
Hopefully it was the books that you used.
Yeah, but it was the silence of the room. It was just, because I was getting my hair cut. You can see the really bad haircut I have right now, just right before I came to meet you guys. And we were lamenting, the guy who was cutting my hair badly. We were lamenting the fact that record stores, except there's a great one down on Main Street, Kaboom or whatever.
Maryland Avenue, Ka-Chunk.
Yeah. But I went there the other day, the same night, in fact. And so it was a nostalgia night. And I'm flipping through the albums, and all of a sudden I'm transported back to like 1982 and Randolph Road in Rockville at Peaches, where I'm looking through the albums, and just that sound and the feel, and the feel of the when I'm flipping the albums, of the wind hitting me as I flip them. And I felt the same way when I went to your store, is that,
that's cool.
that all of a sudden that sound of just the silence of the room, because it's carpeted and you have like it's like going into a private library, like it's some rich person's estate or something like that. And the sound of the book when you're opening up, of the binding kind of creaking a little bit. And I told you when you came in, the one thing that got me in there was I was walking by, and in the window in the front, there was a display of Michener's Chesapeake, which I love. And, that's where I hesitated, because I had that same feeling that probably half the people who come in going, I'm going to put one over on the owner here, because I'm going to open it up and it's going to be some inscribed Michener inscription on the inside, and he doesn't know he's sitting on this valuable book, and I'm just going to pay my $9 and get out there, and it's going to be worth a fortune. But it was awesome. It really was. And you have a great section for local stuff, which was killer. And there was a local book by Crosby. I was going to say David Crosby, but no, it's Ralph Crosby. Mm-hmm. David Crosby's still in recovery. Ginger Doyle, going to market. But
Jane McWilliams, City on the Summer.
Middleton?
Jane McWilliams.
Yeah, and wasn't there a Middleton?
There was a Arthur Pierce Middleton did a book on Annapolis. Right. He did actually a couple of books.
So there's some great gems in there, and I was also telling you, we had a great conversation before we started recording, which is always stupid on our part. But I was a 2 book a week kind of guy, growing like from when I was a kid till 10 years ago. And when the iPad came around, I, instead of, reading at night and just sitting by the fire, is now I'll watch, I have the TV on, but I don't even watch it. I'll flip to the iPad, and I don't read books on the iPad because it doesn't have the same feel.
It's definitely not the same experience.
But going in it's a pretty awesome place. I got to tell you, I really do like it a lot.
Yeah, it's interesting because, as you might imagine, people always ask me and talk to me about, what's the future of the book, and, are there going to be any books in the future, all this kind of stuff. And I mean, I always look at it this way: even if there was never another book published or printed, it would take an awful long time to get rid of all the ones we already have. I mean, aside from some concerted effort to hunt them all down and put them in a big pile somewhere.
Well, how do you do that? Speaking of which, how do you hunt them down? Like, how do you go and find the books that you have in there?
The ones you see there in the shop are the ones that got through the doors. I'm standing at the front door, like begging for no more to come in. Half joking when I say that, actually, but now people bring things all the time. I get called out to houses. I buy a lot of things from other booksellers. I buy things at auctions, estates, things like that.
Have you ever done what I just said, where like you go and you buy something at an estate or something like that, you open it up and it's like Hemingway inscribed, for whom the bell tolls or something like that, and you're like, I'll take this for $1.
Yeah,
and then run to your car.
Yeah, I've had some pretty good finds. Obviously, if I'm doing that at a house that I've been called out to, it's not $1 because I'm making an offer based on what the market value is and what my wholesale price would be. But if I were to find something like that at a sale or another shop or something, then that'd be a bargain for sure.
What have you found that surprised you? What's like the biggest gem you found?
The one that let's say I got one today. And it's just it's a book that wouldn't mean anything to anybody else, but I got it from an online auction, Blood Meridian, which is a book by Cormac McCarthy.
Oh yeah, he wrote The Road.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
The Road, yeah. there's a first edition. I mean, that book was published in 1985, which doesn't seem like that long ago.
Right.
Not that long ago. But I was able to pick up one of those at a sale. And that was for like a couple bucks. It's absolutely fantastic.
Why is it so valuable?
It's because, so this was the book just before All the Pretty Horses, which was his breakout book.
Right.
He had always had sort of like literary critics always appreciated his work, but he had never had any commercial success.
Which kind of goes with the territory.
Yeah, it's the same old story. And then, and he had published quite a few things. And then All the Pretty Horses comes along, and then people start looking at his previous work more. And the novel Blood Meridian it's absolutely.
Yeah, I've never read it.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Is it good?
Yeah. It takes place in the West right after the war with Mexico, 1840s, late 1840s, 1850. I don't even know how to describe it. I don't want to get into all that right now, but it's interesting because it has a connection to Annapolis in a way, which is a book that I have at my shop right now too, as a matter of fact. There's a character in the book, and it's actually McCarthy based Blood Meridian on a book that was written by a guy named Samuel Chamberlain, who left his memoirs or his account of his service in the war with Mexico and afterwards. And that book wasn't actually published until the 1950s, even though he wrote it like at the turn of the 20th century. But Chamberlain, whose memoirs or recollections Blood Meridian is based upon, he was actually in the Army, obviously during the war with Mexico, goes out, comes back in during the Civil War, back in the military again. And during the Civil War, Chamberlain ends up in command of the hospital at St. John's College.
Oh, really? I knew there was a hospital at St. John's College.
Yeah, the Army took over St. John's and also the Naval Academy. A lot of people know that. But Chamberlain commanded for a period of time the St. John's campus.
What's your favorite genre? I'm going through my mind and looking at your displays, trying to figure out, because you had...
I'm all over the place, but I would say I probably prefer nonfiction. I read a lot of geeky things like about bookselling and history of the trade and stuff like that,
Yeah, I'm not interested in that.
Stuff that's not on my reading list.
Yeah, stuff that wouldn't be on anybody else's reading list.
What do they call a book collector?
Bibliophile.
Bibliophile, yeah, I guess.
Maniac.
Yeah.
Book collector, I guess.
Right.
So within that, I like reading things about, no one should take this the wrong way because it's just something that's interesting to me, is like things on forgeries, famous book thefts or art thefts, art forgeries, autograph and manuscript thieves and forging and that kind of stuff. It's always been really interesting to me. I kind of tend to steer away from autograph material just because I don't trust much of it.
Right.
Yeah, it's legitimate. Why did you make the move from online to storefront? At the time that you did this, Amazon is just barreling down
the recession hit and everything. You go, you know what? I'd like to open a store.
Yeah, really.
Told you never should have done those drugs when you were...
Yeah, I've got a great idea. Middle of the recession, I'm going to open a brick-and-mortar retail store.
That's a niche.
Because, it is actually. Because the thing about selling books online or anything else, it's like a mass-produced item. It could be records, it could be anything. So your options are what? Put it on eBay, right? There are 500 examples of the same thing that everybody else is offering. Books have some particular places you would go to sell books, like Abe Books and other sites like that. But the downfall with selling stuff like that online is your copy of something that you're trying to sell is essentially presented right next to everybody else in the world who has the exact same thing they're trying to sell.
So you're just competing on price at that point.
It's not even so much that. It's just a simple. Price is what you would think, but it's not even that. It's a matter of visibility.
Mm-hmm.
So if there are 100 copies of
why walk across the street to buy it when I can buy it right here?
Right. Yeah, true.
For your Miniatures Chesapeake, right? So there are probably 50 hardcovers of that right now that I could get to with 2 clicks. Mm-hmm. Am I going to add one more to that? What good is that going to do?
Right.
So, but in the early days when the internet just, first began, it was like the proportion of people seeking things to buy online was through the roof compared to what was available to buy, especially for like unique things like individual copies of books. So in the early stages, you would list a book and put it out there and it would sell like overnight,
Right.
literally. And that just, gradually over the next decade completely flipped around. So in order to combat that lack of visibility, what you encounter if you put something on the internet in a group of like other items, a retail store. Hey, how about that? So now instead of your copy being shelved on a bookshelf that is essentially infinity with all the same copies of everybody else's stuff, yours is now the only one that's like visible at that moment that the person's
in a town. Interesting. And you moved initially. Your initial store was over on West Street in the first block of West Street.
Correct. Yes.
And then you moved down to
where was it? It was right where
45.
Gotcha.
It was where Art Farm is right now.
Yeah.
2 doors down
gotcha.
from
Right.
49 West.
Gotcha.
San Joe's parking lot, me.
Oh, I remember. Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah.
And why did you move down to Main Street? Aside from the Main Street is a much cooler looking store with the ladders and everything else.
Yeah, actually, that's a very big part of it. That particular storefront on Main Street was the one that I wanted because it had been a bookstore 100 years ago.
Oh,
was it really?
Okay. That was sort of, I want to call it like an Army Navy surplus kind of store. Was it?
No, it was. It had been a pawn shop from like the 30s until about 1970, and then at that point, the son of the man who started it as a pawn shop took over, and he, didn't want to be in that kind of a business necessarily. So he sold a lot of, and they had previously sold musical instruments and.
Okay, that's what I'm thinking. I think I may have bought a harmonica there.
Yeah, so Howard Lerner, who is the person that you would recognize there, he sold musical instruments, guitar strings, harmonicas, binoculars, all kinds of like quirky, neat little things that,
What was it called? Do you remember?
It was called the Public Sales Office. Yeah,
okay.
I remember very well. So Howard's father, Sam Lerner, moved, I should say, his business from middle of Main Street up there to that location, 194 in 1935, and it was a public loan office. So in other words, basically a pawn shop, and that was very successful. And then Howard took over in 1970. But prior to all of that, at about sometime 1900 or 1904, somewhere in there, the bookseller George Jones had his shop there. And Jones sold books, magazines, newspapers. He had a lending library. He would take in midshipmen into his, to give them a place to stay if they needed a place to stay during breaks and stuff like that. They couldn't get home. So yeah, that particular storefront was what I was really interested in. In fact, I had gone in there a couple of times and talked to Howard Lerner because I had, in my accumulation of inventory and stuff like that, I had come across this souvenir album of photographs of Annapolis, and it had been published by Jones at that address. So it said on it, George Jones, Annapolis, 194 Main Street. So I took it in there, just to show him, see, how cool this is, and he acknowledged it, but it was not like he
went over the.
He goes, nice.
Yeah,
so.
Right. So anyway, so that was way before I even opened my store that I had that encounter, and so I just kind of got to know the history of that particular space, and so that was where I wanted to go.
It feels like when you go in there, seriously, it feels like you're in an old mansion library that's...
some of that's good, some of that's bad, but it is, I'm pretty sure, the last unrenovated interior on Main Street. In terms of within the last 8 years or so.
So you've been downtown for what, 10 years?
No. Total, let's see, so I opened the store in 2011, so
okay.
Bricks and mortar since almost 8 years.
What's it like doing business as in Annapolis? We always hear that Annapolis is such a horrible place to do business. Obviously, it has its problems. And
I'm starting to think, when I talk to people in other towns, I'm starting to think that it's not endemic to Annapolis. I think that most towns are kind of...
I haven't really operated a business in any other town, so I don't really have a way to compare. But, I wouldn't be anywhere else, really. We've got a lot of, like a good combination of factors here. A good local population that likes to support the downtown, although for my type of business, I don't think there are enough of them.
Would you fall into like the antique category? Like if you go to Maryland Ave, there's just so many antique stores, and that's probably the same.
Not as many as there used to be, but there are some. Yeah, and it's a very similar category. In fact, I say that to a lot of my colleagues, in the book business, who still. That's an interesting point because a lot of booksellers even still think of themselves as in the book business,
right?
And you're not at this point because it's it's not a text anymore.
Right. It's for collectors for the most part.
Way.
So you're not selling. I mean, if you're selling a text and you're trying to sell it on paper, you're done.
Well, because that's a good point. I mean, if I'm looking for a particular book, if I'm looking for a quick read, if I'm looking for,
I still do, of course, sell paperback copies of literature,
sure,
like that, and that's not the future of the book business. In my opinion, at least not the business.
But you rely on a very specific customer, just as the antique dealers do for the most part.
Yeah, but a lot of people get lured into it. I mean,
yeah, I can see it.
A ton of business with people that are here, on day trips from DC or Baltimore or Philadelphia, and they just wander in and happen to see something that touches them, speaks to them.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it might be a book that they've heard about and they've never seen it in book form, or maybe it's something they remember from their childhood. But I don't do well with people who are looking for a very specific book. I jokingly, but maybe not jokingly, I want to make the motto of the shop be, we don't have what you're looking for.
I'm in marketing. I might need to be able to tweak that for you just a little bit. I just either that or just don't come in here, please. That's the.
No, it's not that, but it's the idea is, I have a few thousand books in inventory at best. Okay, people will call and ask for some, a very specific thing, and I'm not going to have it. It's a browser's place. You go there when like you did the other day.
You're buying off of an interest that you have.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's more than that, because I did this a few years ago that I went to. It was probably about 10 years ago, and there was an antique store here in town, and they had a few books, and they had the old Nancy Drews. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't looking for it. I wasn't even thinking about it, but my wife loved Nancy Drews when she was a kid, and I picked up 3 or 4 books there.
Exactly what I'm talking
and I wasn't looking for them, but I got them. She loved them.
You could call 10 bookshops and ask them if they had those particular Nancy Drews
right.
picked up that day. No.
Yeah, and I never read them, so I just grabbed 4 of them, and that's where I was. And she goes, "Oh my God, I love this one." And
that's my point.
Right.
I don't have.
Well, that's where I found the other day when I was in your place, and I thought I'd walk in and walk out, and I was in there for a good half hour just looking at stuff that you had some books from everything from history, like the 1930s, 1920s, 1930s, and then you had some poetry and literature and nonfiction, and the local stuff was great, So I found myself in there a lot longer than I thought I'd be, considering that I've kind of fallen off from reading for the last 10 years too. So it's amazing.
Well, I know you've got some challenges coming up in January. The city is going to be tearing up the street.
Correct.
To install initially pipe stubs for sprinklers to the buildings, and then they're going to come down and tear it up again to repave and redo the street that was never done right in the first place. And I know that you've been fairly vocal on some of the other issues that you see as a business owner that's there day in and day out.
Right.
Also, I would say Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, but we know that's not the hours of retail.
Yeah. I'm there more than that.
How does a small business like that survive when they're going to close down Main Street or part of Main Street for you, and some of the other issues that you face?
Right. So, let's see. We'll deal with the closure of Main Street first. I might be naive, but I'm actually not that concerned about it. It's not ideal, and I wish it weren't happening, but I don't think it's going to be completely devastating.
Because people aren't, they're driving past you at that point.
Right.
It's not like
if someone's in their car driving on Main Street, they're not stopping at my store anyway. So I rely on the people that are already on the sidewalks. And this go around with the repaving of Main Street, unlike when they did it in 95, does not include the sidewalks. So sidewalks are going to remain open. To what extent does the region know that Annapolis' Main Street is closed for repaving, and therefore they don't come to Annapolis?
Most of the residents don't even.
I don't think that's going to have a big impact. So I honestly don't know that that's a huge impact there.
That's good. That's encouraging. I'm
an optimist.
I am not.
Who knows me would tell you I'm not.
You're German, yeah.
Exactly.
Well, I know and we've had the discussion before in the past too, as well as, and I think Ralph Crosby had mentioned it in his book, that we got to a point where Annapolis turned from a downtown, a family destination where they had a bookseller, they had a market, they had a butcher, they had a five and dime,
a practical and utilitarian downtown.
He calls it the restauranting of Annapolis.
Right.
And that's exactly what it is. And I know Sean O'Neill has said that building owners are holding out for the high rent they can get from a bar or a restaurant, because that's where they're going to be able to get the biggest dollar.
But I got to push back on that, because this is what we've talked about this ad nauseum. But you're new, so yeah. But it was.
I've talked about it now.
So my issue is, and we've said this many times, that we have an Annapolis now that is a creation. It's Disneyfication. This is the Annapolis that we pretend has always existed, and this is not the Annapolis that was historically accurate. If you look at any of the pictures of Annapolis from even 50 years ago, it looked nothing like it does now. It looks like a typical downtown anywhere, with the overhead wires, with the practical stores, the utilitarian stores, like drugstores and grocery stores and butcher shops and shoe stores and all those things. Now that here comes the pushback. People who live...
I would say, I don't know if that's necessarily a planned situation.
Well, I would say...
Things evolve in certain ways, and this happens to have evolved in the way you just described.
I think it evolved because there was that desire for the tourism, that you look at industry and you're saying this is a tourist destination, so we've gravitated towards that area. Now, I'm not going to rail about the T-shirt shops and everything, because they're here because they're profitable, and so they're successful here. My issue is with the residents who say that, like, we want another Rookies, we want another butcher shop. These are all the things they want, and they don't want those things, because when we do have those things, they don't patronize them.
I can't argue.
So that's where I think that's where I look at the residents of Annapolis. There's plenty of blame to go around for whatever the recession did to Annapolis, but I look at the residents who live downtown, and I don't think they support a lot of the local businesses here downtown, and I think it's all a fantasy that they say they want these things, but they don't.
Well, it's a love-hate, for sure.
One thing is, there aren't enough of them to support some kind of...
Well, I think, but the population hasn't changed. It's the same population as before.
Yeah, but I mean, the rents, it's all, believe me, there are no easy answers, but the rents are a big factor.
No, I think that's a major factor, right.
As John alluded to, is... the sales of alcohol and, primarily, let's just, cut to the chase, it's primarily liquor licenses that go to 2 a.m.
Right.
I mean, at some point, the highest and best use of a piece of a space on Main Street, if you can sell, liquor till 2 a.m., I mean, that's the highest and best use of that space.
Yeah, and so if
the rents all get driven off from that basis.
And if we broke down the restaurants downtown, how many do the locals go to? And that'd be interesting. Like, what are the local restaurants? But I mean, let's be honest. So Middleton's is not a locals restaurant. I'd say
Preserve probably is. I would say not Treaty of Paris.
No, definitely not. Asteria or Asteria. That's probably because that's higher end.
Locals, I think. I mean, I don't know. I don't tend to eat much downtown.
But also I had a friend who lived downtown for years, and this was probably about 10 years ago, and he would say, this was after the Market House flooded out and they were doing the renovations. He goes, there's nowhere in downtown Annapolis to get a quick bite. That was his argument. He goes, there's nowhere in Annapolis in downtown where you can get a bite where a tip's not involved, where you have to sit down and have a waitress or waiter come up and take your order. And at the time, he was right. Mm-hmm. So I think right now you have you have Jimmy John's, you have Pips, which we love. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I love Mason's, but that's a sometimes thing. The lobster roll place. But I mean, overall, I guess there's more places than there were to grab a bite. So you probably have that struggle that a lot of the downtown businesses have, is what business do you derive from locals versus visitors versus tourists? And visitors, I would put, tourists would be like out of state, right. And whereas visitors would be, the parents of the naval cat or the midshipmen or what have you. That's.
Yeah, but I love the locals that I have as customers.
Because that would probably be your niche for the most part, right?
Well, no. I mean, to be honest, the vast.
That's like the fifth time I've used that word too.
Again, it comes from visitors. The vast majority of my business comes from visitors.
Just people who just kind of coming through.
Interesting. Yeah. Restaurants. I mean, I know that Buddy's is involved in a lawsuit right now for their dumpster and
oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Their trash thing that they've got going on.
I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah, they've got they store some of their trash in a box truck behind the restaurant, and it blocks the driveway to a residence.
Oh yeah, okay. Now I know what you're talking about.
Oh yeah, I know that now.
Now
and all of that. I know that you've been critical. I remember. I think it was on 4th of July or something like that. There was trash.
That's what I'm known for.
Wait, what was that? I missed that whole thing.
It was actually Memorial Day.
Okay.
And this was a couple of years ago, I guess, on Memorial Day. So it's Monday, Memorial Day. There's a parade, set to take place on Main Street. And I happened to be in my shop a little early. I was there like at 9 or something like that. So I was able to witness, like, literally within a half an hour before the parade was supposed to start. The parade was supposed to start at 10, I think, or 10:30, something like that. There's huge mounds of garbage that still haven't been picked up on Main Street. And, and some of them aren't even in cans, so it's leaking. And
after the weekend, too, yeah.
Yeah, and it was horrible. And, they finally did get the garbage truck through there just before the first, ban came down in the opposite direction. So here, and I took a picture of it because that's what I do. But there's this picture of the Vietnam veterans of Annapolis marching literally through, lobster juice that is out all over Main Street. And I'm just thinking, we can do better than this. I mean, this is...
Yeah, the impression that you have, I remember when Laura Fritz was doing economic development for the city, Mayor Cohen had hired her, and she came in and she says, oh my gosh, there was just so much gum on the streets. And she was the impetus behind the gum machine that has been a waste of money and has never really been used.
Yeah,
right.
I've never seen that rolled out.
And when I talked to her, she said that was just something because most people now, they're either on their phones or they're whatever, and the sidewalk is noticeable, and to keep it pristine is something there. And then
I think it's so. There are no easy answers to any of these problems that Annapolis has. Perennial things like parking and what to do with the sea level rise and. The market house, of course, all that kind of stuff. But then we come to a thing like the garbage, which is sitting there at noon on a Monday. That surely is something we can do something about. That's very visible, it's very tangible. I think, we should just, and actually Joe Budge did recently get an ordinance through to require it to be removed by 8 a.m. So far, I haven't seen that's had any effect on me.
And trash removal for businesses is not a municipal service.
Correct.
You have to pay.
And there's some debate about that too, because it used to be apparently.
Oh, I never thought about that.
So there are people who say, the way to solve this is to have the city pick up all of the garbage. And, I'm not necessarily opposed to that. The problem, though, comes when, so how do you get businesses to pay their share of what that costs?
Yeah, versus you paying extra versus buddies paying extra.
One trash can a week with
books,
paper, and some plastic, some drink containers, whatever, something like that. It's not 10 cans full of food waste.
Right.
Sure, you could just put it in the back of your car and take it home.
I could, in fact, I literally could.
It's interesting there.
And that ties into this whole trash thing, and the delivery trucks is another one. We talk about all the time, how do we get a more diverse type of businesses on Main Street? And it occurs to me that part of the reason why it's become restaurantized, as to use Ralph's terminology, is because a lot of the things that the burdens that those types of businesses create, we as a community just seem to absorb willingly. Sometimes it's in terms of actual money, like the replacement of Main Street, which needs replacement after half its life, useful projected life, largely because of the weight of the delivery truck.
So you're saying that when you're looking at the businesses downtown, that there are some that use a disproportionate amount of the resources from the city. So, it makes sense.
Sometimes in terms of actual financial cost, like with now we've got to replace Main Street after 20 instead of 50 years.
Right.
But also just in terms of quality of life. Who hasn't been stuck behind a garbage truck in the morning trying to go up Main Street at 9 in the morning, as they amble up the street.
I had a blowout once. I was coming up the garage from Hillman to get to Conduit, and they'd backed up all the traffic down that little alley and then out onto Main Street and past for people because they were taking the trash from Chicken Roost, and they didn't care. And there were people out of their cars yelling, and they're yelling back. And
that probably wasn't at 4 a.m., was it?
No, that was it was 2 p.m. on a Tuesday or something like that.
Why? Why do we do that? I don't understand.
Well, I think there's some things I came to peace with. There was something I see like the delivery trucks, and like for example on West Street, there's the car dealers on West Street, and from time to time they'll have the car carriers, and the car carriers will park on the side of West Street and shut down a lane, and it always irritated me. Going West Street, inner or outer West Street is hard enough to navigate without shutting down a lane, but then the other side of me going, what are they supposed to do? I mean, how do you unload? I don't know if there's a practical application to how you.
Well, of course there are other ways to do it.
Yeah. So there, but then and there's the argument is going, is it times of day saying, are they deliver this stuff at 5 a.m, right. Or do you, so
that's my argument, and I know it's going to be hugely unpopular.
Well, but I'm trying to decide. I'm easily outraged, so I'm trying to decide what I have right to be outraged about and what's not.
Well, look, here it's simple, all right. And again, there's not going to be a popular argument with a lot of people, I don't think. But if you want a more diverse group of businesses downtown, require that the garbage all has to be picked up by no later than 7 a.m. and make the contracted special delivery trucks also have to be done by 7 a.m. and weight restrict the street.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually, too.
Because, and the problem, the reason there's going to be would be huge pushback against anything like that is because it costs more. You're going to have an employee there to take the deliveries earlier in the day when employees aren't normally there.
Right.
You have to have, you have to put pressure on your garbage contractor to make sure that they're there, before 7 a.m. And they'll charge you more probably to do that because it's at a time that they wouldn't normally want to operate. Okay, but by not doing those kinds of things, for lack of a better word, you're subsidizing those businesses that create those burdens.
And there's a reality.
You're subsidizing that. So nobody is subsidizing Back Creek Books. Okay?
Right.
Nobody's subsidizing Ron George's business as a community. You're not waiting behind delivery trucks to bring diamonds into Ron's.
He wishes.
Right. That's the reality. It's our types of businesses, small boutique, retail, upscale retail kinds of, they don't create the burden on the community, but we don't reap any benefit. Nobody subsidizes us in the same way.
What's funny, in the Ward 1 race for Alderman, we had
Billy Turney?
No.
Larry Clausen. So Larry had what his proposal, and it was very unpopular, obviously. And what Larry had said was that he thought that the businesses of Annapolis were using a disproportionate amount of the resources from the city. So he wanted to tax the instead of just the tax on the buildings themselves and the fees that are accumulated from permitting and everything. Right. He wanted, and if I'm misspeaking, I don't care, but I think he wanted an additional fee or tax or what have you for the businesses to cover what they use. And in which your case going, look, I'm a small business that it doesn't use nearly as much resources as any of the restaurants downtown, certainly. So why would I pay an equal amount of that?
And I'm not trying to bash bars and restaurants by any means. Annapolis is a great place because of them, but you can't get around the fact that we absorb a lot of their costs of operating. Mm-hmm. We do. It's a simple fact, and nobody does the same sort of subsidy for any other types of businesses.
It's funny. We always talk about the way that the city handles businesses and business in general. We've always been critical of it. Just like if you had a podcast in any town in Maryland or anywhere, they'd be critical because of the bureaucracy and the red tape involved. I've rarely heard this, which is, you're looking at other businesses and the resources they take and the space and everything they do. Where you go, look, we have to cooperate among ourselves too. Right. As a business community that,
absolutely. And there's huge, there are big problems with retail in general. That's no news to anyone. Just look around in the financial landscape. Mm-hmm. Retail is in a struggle,
and the restaurants do too as well. Because
there is no easy business,
especially in a tourist town like this.
There is no easy business. No.
I don't know, the marijuana dispensary, that seems like it's going to do pretty well.
I'm sure they have their challenges.
I doubt they do. I think they're going to print money. Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A doesn't have any challenges.
I'll tell you, I want to get to one thing. We went back into Facebook a little bit, and I had put a post up about the Santa Speedo Run.
Oh, yes.
Okay, and
why am I missing all this stuff? Maybe because I have you blocked.
To chime in and said, "Oh my gosh, it's like this event is just absolutely horrible for downtown businesses." Now, the Santa Speedo Run.
I don't think I said businesses. I might have said retail.
Retail, okay. Now, Santa Speedo Run is running actually this Thursday when you're here.
Because they're going to be drinking booze.
Or Saturday, the 16th or whatever it is. It's
Perfect.
10:30. Gets underway at about 12:30 for a mile run around town, and then they come back down to O'Brien's and they drink some more.
Right.
And Rocky's just got this look on his face.
Well, he is. He's got this. I'm looking at this 30-minute. Yeah. My eyes. But it's a 30-minute sprint through downtown, starting and ending into a bar.
Well, explain a little more for people. Explain it a little more so that people know.
For you that don't know, basically it's a fundraiser for Toys for Tots or a Toys campaign. It's a drinking party. You come down, you wear a Speedo or a 2-piece bikini or a 1-piece, whatever, sort of a Christmas themed thing. And usually there's 300 or 400 people.
Yeah, it's
will
packed.
Be at the bar. And at one point they'll go and they will do about a mile loop. And typically it's like up Main Street, around Church Circle, down around the dock, over the bridge, back and over.
What time is it during the day?
They start to arrive around 10:30. Usually they start to run at about 12:30, and they're done by 1. And then they party in for the rest of the
So
afternoon.
that's Rock's differentiation is that it's for the bars and restaurants. It's great.
Yeah, no, it is.
Oh,
But they're not going to come browse books.
Well, exactly. I mean, these are not people that are going to patronize any of the retail businesses.
My brother's a bartender in Manhattan, and this past weekend was the SantaCon, and he loathes SantaCon. He said it is just hell.
So events in general. We'll start by talking about events.
Because this might give me some insight into Sven Storm, because I mean, he's just is absolutely livid that there's so many marathons and running.
Yeah, Sven's never been a fan of events.
Well, it's because he actually has a different business than I do. He's not in retail per se. I mean, it's more food, but events that use Annapolis as a backdrop. So often if they're publicized in the region, they keep people who are just kind of wanting to come here for the day, they kind of keep them away. If you know that half of the streets are going to be blocked at some point during a Saturday for a race or marathon.
Why locals don't come down during the boat show.
Yeah, exactly. So you lose your locals, and you lose people that are aware of it in the region that don't come here because they want to avoid the weekend that there's a big event like that going on. And then the people that attend the event themselves, they don't shop. They're here to do the event. Mm-hmm. They come here, they do the event, they eat, they drink, and they leave. Done. So, don't just take my word for it. Ask any retailer on Main Street.
Interesting. I mean, it's something that I had not thought about. Yeah. I mean, it does make some sense.
Often our town gets used as the backdrop for some of this stuff. But it doesn't really benefit most of the time. I mean, there are certainly exceptions.
Midnight Madness certainly is a big one.
Well, I mean, that's a
which, by the way, is tonight.
That's a event.
Exactly.
What about the parades? What about the 4th of July or the St. Patrick's Day parade, which is huge, or even the Military Bowl, which is coming up at the end of December?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on, I don't know, there's so many...
Again, Military Bowl is probably a little bit different because you're bringing 2 teams in that are staying for a day or so.
And actually, that's a key point, is if it is in the case of the Military Bowl, where you're bringing people from out of town here, and they're here for a long enough period of time that they have time to do their own thing and get out and walk around and go shopping and stuff like that. That tends to be really good for us. Navy games can be hit and miss, depends on the team.
Right.
The Military Bowl usually is good. But if it's an event that's just for that day and it's so tightly scheduled, I mean, you count on that visitors are always going to eat and drink. They're not necessarily going to shop.
Sure.
So that's where we lose out, is if it's an event that's really, kind of tightly scheduled and widely publicized.
What are your hours?
Let's see. We'll start with Sunday. Sunday's 11 to 6. Then the rest of the week, 10 to 6. Friday and Saturday, I stay open until 9.
You do stay up till 9?
Yes. I do. I wish more stores did.
Good for you.
Yeah, not many do.
I know, because I know where you're going with that. that is retailers that are bitching about not getting the open when everyone else is at work.
Annabeth's does.
Give up that morning hours and take it in the evening.
I would agree.
I would love to see Annapolis. I would love to see the retailers get together and say, okay, for 6 months, we are going to take Thursday only or Wednesday only, Tuesday only, whatever it is.
100%.
And we are going to stay open until 9, maybe 10 o'clock at night. Right. But we're not going to open until noon. And we're going to sit there and look and see where the dollars are.
I agree completely.
You know, Annabeth's does on Maryland Ave. She always stays open late. And
there are a few.
The tea and spice place, they always stay open late.
But see, when it's like spotty,
right?
There.
Clay Baker says no. But if you turn around and somebody in Ellicott City says, hey, let's go to Annapolis because they're open on Thursdays. I think that would just do wonderfully. I mean, there are a few. The Clay Bakers are really good. I think, like you say, the Tea and Spice, Annabeth's, Kachunka's open late. I know.
Well, we would say that is if you go to the tree lighting every year, is that everyone shows up at the tree lighting, they light the tree, and then they're going. No,
I will say Jennifer
Zachary's is always open.
The new owners of Mills, they're a little bit different. But when Hillard Donner owned it, it was just amazing. You've got 2,000 people out there who doesn't want to buy a bottle of wine or something to go home. And why the hell is Mills closed?
Right. I know. I used to think of it as the banker's hour liquor store.
Yeah, and people can make fun of the T-shirt shops, but they're open till all hours.
Right. I agree, and that's retail certainly does not do itself any favors with some of these things. And I have tried. I did for a while. I was open late on Thursdays, and it wasn't as worth it as Friday and Saturday.
Well, it has to be. It's the mall mentality.
You get a critical mass too of shopping. So. What's missing? Another thing that's missing downtown is, the idea that you could come down here, have dinner, and then go
continue to shop.
Which right now, you really can't.
I was talking to Steve Samaras the other day, and he was saying that he's going to float this idea is to get rid of we'll see how this goes, but get rid of the meters. Mm-hmm. 3 hours free parking. Mm-hmm. All the time, so you can shop and you can have dinner.
Right.
You need 3 hours to do all that.
If you need more. You've got the garages, you get the signage and everything else to go there.
Right.
And yes, the city's going to lose some meter revenue, but they probably will pick that up in tax revenue and everything else that's going on.
But you know what?
Even if they're not, he says that you take that $300,000 or $600,000 a year that they get in meter revenue, and you maybe assess businesses. What would it be to a business?
I will say this though, and this is
be very aggressive on ticketing for that 3 hours.
Okay, that's where I was going with that.
We've got the overrunning of the time of the 3 hours, but you also have
employees.
Yep,
I've seen it.
That's a huge problem.
I've seen restaurant employees come out to feed meters before, like right in front of the businesses.
And right now, with the bags on for the holidays, it's 3 hours. All of a sudden, because the residents in Annapolis or in Ward 1 complain about employees parking in the residential district.
Right.
Well, you only have 2 hours there. So now it's even more advantageous for the employees to park the meters on Main Street for 3 hours for free.
And that's even if SP Plus is on the ball.
If you're an employee on Main Street, you could still, right now, tomorrow, go park there for 3 hours. And SP Plus isn't going to be a ticket because you're allowed to park there. Yeah, that parking is that's another, one of my pet peeves, as is it, of everyone's. But I think there are a lot of things that we don't really pay close enough attention to. One is, we have these garages that pretty much sit empty a lot of the time. Spa.
Yeah, some of the outer ones, certainly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Knighton's you can park at any level you want over at Knighton.
Park Place discourages people. They really...
I know there are a lot of issues with having employees park in those instead of in the residential streets or on Main Street, but surely there's some way to utilize that stuff better for the business owners and the employees that are downtown. It would be interesting to if there was a way to know if you went up Main Street like tomorrow afternoon, how many of those cars are visitors to Annapolis or locals who are there to do business versus employees at those businesses.
Right.
What you do is chalk those tires.
But that doesn't tell you what they're there for.
But if you see them the next day with the chalk tires, you know that they're just kind of using up space every day.
Used to be easy. You used to put a sticker for residents could get a sticker to park in the garage for free. They've done away with that. But I'll tell you, it's been a great insight as far as retail on that. I would say, and I was so curious about that whole Santa Speedo Run where you said that events like that are horrible for retail.
Yeah,
and that makes a lot of sense now that you explained it.
And that one in particular turns into a lot of alcohol-fueled activity.
Now you're speaking my language. Yeah.
I know the organizer of it, and he says the bars love them. He said they've never seen rings like that. And
I'm sure it's great for the charity and all that kind of thing, but you can talk to, there's one merchant in particular on Main Street I know who will tell you that last year, his wife and like young daughter were coming to bring him something at the shop, and they got mooned by one of the full on. Right. And everybody with the Santa was like laughing. They thought it was hilarious, and it was that kind of stuff is not real.
Yeah. Most of which people should not be anywhere near a Speedo, much less wearing them.
In the afternoon, on a Saturday afternoon. And the thing is too, it's like it's right before the Christmas. It's right before Christmas.
Yeah.
I'll never forget my I think it was my first year or second year on West Street, where it ended in that parking lot between where my shop was and Stan and Joe's. And it took place literally on the Saturday before Christmas, which would normally be certainly one of the biggest, if not my biggest day of the year.
Right.
It completely destroyed it, completely obliterated it. I should not even have been open.
I think I still have a picture of that group out in front of the Dunkin' Donuts.
Right.
Taking the group Santa Speedo picture.
So, forgive me if I don't have a warm spot.
Interesting. All right. Well, have a warm spot for Back Creek Books.
Yes.
194?
Yes, 194 Main Street.
Main Street. And I said this to you the other day when I was talking with you, it is arguably the most unique store on Main Street. There are a couple of funny ones, but I mean, it's a very unique thing. It's a great browsing store if you're into nonfiction, history, Annapolis history, Lincoln.
Yes.
Do it if you just want to talk a little bit about what it is. I mean, Rock is a great conversationalist. We've got 3 really good local independent bookstores. I mean, you've got Back Creek Books here on Main Street. You've got Old Fox and Annapolis Bookstore.
I don't know the last time we've had 3 in town. You'd have to go way back.
Which is neat. So forgo Amazon and go to get thee to a book.
We're all geographically closer together.
To have a district.
I wish they were on Main Street.
Yeah. So get thee to a bookery.
Yes, indeed.
Rock Toews, thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thank you.
And best of luck for a successful Christmas season and a Midnight Madness and 11th hour. So make sure you check them out.
I hope to see everybody at the shop.
Alrighty. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Rock.
This has been the Maryland Crabs Podcast with Tim Hamilton and John Fernay. Sure to follow them in all the regular places, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and online at themarylandcrabs.com. Take a moment to rate us on iTunes. Now, get the hell out of my kitchen. Seriously, go!
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.